Hi, today's video is going to be about parenting with unresolved grief and how it affects you and what you can do about it. If you don't know me, my name is Annie. I am a grief recovery specialist and a health coach, and I help people move through grief and step into fuller and healthier lives. Thank you for being here. Now, I often start my videos or write my blog posts saying that being a parent is one of life's greatest joys and also one of its biggest challenges. Most of us manage to get through the day, more or less, but there are times where we feel stretched beyond our limits. We may react in ways that we don't like. We might feel like our emotional cup is already empty and we're struggling to pour even a few drops for our children. I'm sure you've been there. I know I have. Now, there's one important truth about being a parent that we don't often talk about. And it's that when we become parents, we bring our entire emotional history with us, including the way we were raised and the unresolved grief that we may still be carrying because of losses. And I'm not just talking about death being a major one that Mike can think of, divorce being another one, but there are over 40 major losses that one can go through in our lifespan. And I'll link to a blog post below with a list of what those losses might be. Now, how might it look like when you're parenting while carrying the past and carrying unresolved grief? Well, first of all, many parents find themselves wanting to break what we call generational cycles. So they want to parent differently than how they were parented. And yet, when their own parents are around their children or make comments about their parenting, they may feel really judged or triggered or frustrated. And sometimes they even catch themselves behaving exactly like their parents used to do, despite having promised that they would never go there. They say something and they immediately think, I sounded just like my mom, or I sounded just like my dad. And for parents who have lost a parent, whether recently or years ago or even decades ago, these dynamics can become even more complicated. And if they're carrying that unresolved grief, it doesn't disappear with time. It can quietly linger, and it can influence how we parent, how we connect, how we cope with the many challenges that come with being a parent and with life in general. Now, how does unresolved grief impact parents? And I'm going to talk about their mental health and their physical health. I never separate the two. So unresolved grief can show up in subtle and not so subtle ways. And by the way, what I'm about to mention, what I'm about to say might really resonate with you. You might say, oh yes, I do that. Oh yeah, I feel like that. I feel like that. But you might also not feel at all like what I'm going to describe. And that's perfectly normal, because grief is highly individual, because the relationship you had with the person you lost is unique. And so your grief will be unique. So please don't feel like if none of what I say applies to you, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm just mentioning some common signs, but it doesn't mean they have to be your signs. So how might death and estrangement, that's a big one as well. It's a big loss, right? You might be estranged from your parents or any other form of emotional loss. How do those affect you as a parent? So first of all, you might be persistently sad or numb or emotionally exhausted, in particular if the loss occurred not so long ago. That might also show up, grief might also show up as anxiety or hypervigilance, especially related to your child's safety and their well-being and their health. You find yourself being extremely stressed about their well-being. You might be suffering from mood swings, and you might be snapping a lot at everything and everyone. A bit too much. You feel like you would have preferred to control that, but you can't help it. You might be over-attached or emotionally enmeshed with your child. You feel like if they are 3 meters away from you, immediately you feel like you've lost a limb, right? Or on the contrary, you might feel emotionally distant. You might not be able to be fully present. You might feel disconnected because your heart is hurting so much from the unresolved grief that there's no space for you to really connect. There's a book that I really love called The Body Keeps the Score. because as I said before, I never separate mental and physical health. They go together and the body keeps the score. If your heart is suffering because of the pain of loss, you will see the impact on your body as well. And I know firsthand what that is like. I suppressed grief and I did not deal with grief regarding my mom's death for almost 20 years. And I was dealing with lots of unexplained issues, and the doctors were not really able to help me. They just said, it seems like you're chronically stressed, or this can only be explained via stress. And it took me a while to put two and two together and realize that, yes, there was chronic stress because I had never dealt with my mom's death. And so that led to, again, chronic stress, hormonal imbalances, etc., etc. And so some parents might be experiencing physical symptoms such as, hormonal imbalances, as I said, but also fatigue or chronic headaches or GI issues. They might be sleeping really poorly. They might not be able to focus well. And because of their heightened cortisol levels, which is very common when somebody is grieving, if you have a constant high cortisol levels, that can contribute to autoimmune conditions, diabetes, even cardiovascular issues. We might also develop what we call emotional eating, where we kind of eat our emotions, or rather we suppress our emotions by putting something in our mouths. I always like to say our emotions are here and they're dying to come to the surface. But if you keep stuffing yourself with food, they're never going to come out. And that's what we do when we are sad, and then we grab something to eat, or when we're upset and we eat something. So emotional eating is really, really big. We might also become dependent on substances such as sugar or caffeine or even alcohol and drugs. But sugar and caffeine are very common. I see that a lot with parents. And also another point that's quite important is that during hormonally sensitive times, so for example in the postpartum period, or even during perimenopause, which is the period before you stop getting your period, so the 10 to 12 years of where you might or not be experiencing symptoms, that period is hormonally quite sensitive. A lot of things are happening, a lot of shifts are happening, and so your symptoms, if you have any, can be exacerbated during that time. You might have even more mood swings, and that can make parenting tasks extremely overwhelming. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention is that if we are carrying unresolved grief, we might unconsciously place emotional expectations on our children. So we might expect them to fill the emotional void left by the loss that we experienced. Think about it that way. It's like you have your heart and it's full of holes of the losses that you've occurred, and you expect your child to fill that hole. It's very unfair to expect them to do that. But that's definitely something that can happen. We might struggle to be fully emotionally available to them. There's so many holes in our heart. How can we really hold that space and be there? And also during milestones such as birthdays or first day of school or graduation and things like that, if we're carrying all that weight of unresolved grief, that might make it really hard for us to be truly present and grounded during those milestones. Now, as a certified grief recovery method specialist, I help parents heal from unresolved loss so they can show up more fully in their lives and in their parenting. And I've experienced that myself. Ever since I went through the grief recovery method, I find myself being much more emotionally present with my children, because I'm not carrying that humongous pain that I was carrying for so many years after losing my mom when I was 10 years old. And I've noticed that I'm able to connect to her in a very different way, and to connect to my children in a very different way, and to think about motherhood and to think about her and to think about everything in a different way. So I went through it and I know what it can do. So I'm going to share what it might be able to do for you. First of all, the grief recovery method is structured. It's a structured method. It's evidence-based, and it's a process. It's really a process designed to support your emotional healing. And it's very different to talk therapy. Here are some ways in which it might help you. So first of all, it will free up emotional energy for your kids. Carrying unresolved grief is emotional energy, so much emotional energy. And there's only so much you can take. So if that emotional energy is there, ready to explode, how much space do you think you have for your kids? And unresolved grief drains your mental and emotional resources. And when you work through it, you become more present, you become more calm, you become more emotionally attuned to your children's needs, to anybody's needs. Like I said before, if you're looking to break generational patterns, there's no better way than going through the grief recovery method, because if you don't want to unintentionally repeat the same parenting patterns that you experienced as a child, the grief recovery method will give you the tools to recognize those behaviors and to allow you to choose a different path. Another thing that often comes with unresolved grief is all those feelings of, I wish I would have done that, I wanted to do that, and I didn't, and regret, guilt, regret, and all of that. And so the grief recovery method gives you a compassionate space to acknowledge all those feelings and to release those really, really painful emotions. And that can improve your self-worth and your confidence as a parent. And also, very importantly, when you learn to identify, process your emotions linked to grief in a healthy way, you're not just healing yourself, you're modeling to your children emotional intelligence and resilience. How do you think they will deal with loss in their lives if you've never dealt with yours? Wouldn't you want them to have this skill? Wouldn't you want them to be able to process loss in a healthy way? Imagine how wonderful it would be if they see you do that, and how much you would be able to help them with their own losses, because kids go through many, many losses in their lifetime as well. Unresolved grief is so heavy. It's a heavy weight that you're carrying in your heart, and you don't have to. Healing is possible. You can let go of that pain. You can break the cycle. You can become a more grounded and more emotionally present parent. And if you're ready to feel better, if you're ready to feel lighter, more connected, more empowered in your parenting journey, then contact me to learn more about the grief recovery method and how I might be able to help you. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.